We just have in here, okay, so the failure to meet membership owner requirements, again, it's not explicit what someone could do, but it could be that if they fail to meet the membership requirements, a very general way of saying you're not working, or rules and conducts as set by the cooperative, rules, conduct, you're not being a very cooperative person. The co-op can restrict or even curtail the person's activities in the co-op. So again, you need something very general to say the co-op as a whole has rules and regulations, and if you are not participating by those rules and regulations, the co-op could take action against you. We have a member fee. In addition to the equity investment 100, we do have the $25 member fee. It's a one-time fee, so if you come and go from the co-op, you join the co-op member for 5 years, you leave, you rejoin in a year, you never pay that $25 over. It's just an administrative fee. It could be set very low, a euro or two, whatever. It's just kind of basically to cover the cost of onboarding a member, basically, for us. Then the rest of the bylaws are going to be, all right, so when your articles of incorporation go into the state, you have to have a board. On the articles of incorporation, you have to identify the major players, and they're called your steering committee, and they serve as your board until you have your first annual meeting. That's how it works in New York. Then after that, as in any corporation, your board is all powerful. So just because we're cooperative, all corporate law is written to make the board powerful. Just like we do everything a little differently, we do this part a little differently. So one of the advantages of not incorporating for 4 years was that we had a general meeting every month, well, sometimes more than once a month. So we had already an established meeting structure to which every member was invited and participated in the decision making. It was kind of the New England town hall style. I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but basically in small New England villages, there's a meeting and everyone in the town is invited to attend, and it's basically, you're a resident of this community, you get to speak, on the agenda item. You get to bring agenda items. You get to ask your neighbors to vote on your agenda items. Well, we kind of adopted that. Very sort of structure in that it was highly participatory. But when we incorporated, the lawyer said, oh, well, you got this way of operating, but you have this board now. And technically, the board doesn't have to listen to these people over here. I know you've been doing that for 4 years, but in the corporate structure, those people really don't have any control over the board except for that they vote for the board. So the board has to be, is limited perhaps in their ability to go rogue on the organization because they will be up for re-election at some point and they could be voted out. So there is some tempering of their behavior, but basically a board could say, yeah, we hear you, but as the legal and financial stewards of the co-op, we think you all are crazy and we're going to do this other thing. Well, that didn't sit well with the co-op. So we're like, well, no, we've been managing ourselves for 4 years, and now now we have to have 5 of you tell us how to manage. We don't think that's right. So what happened, if you want to scroll down, is that we found a lawyer who, let me see. Yeah, keep going. We found a lawyer who said, okay, well, let me work on this. Keep going. It's in the meeting section, I think. He said, oh yeah, here it is. Okay, so it's in Article 2. It's point 2 of Article 6. He said, okay, I think I got this worked out. You have your board. You elect them like everyone else at an annual meeting. They serve terms. They are the final financial and legal stewards of the co-op. But we're going to make them sit through every general meeting. And we're going to make them listen to the people of whom they serve for. And they are going to The directors shall, so first of all, the directors have to tell people about the meeting and what's on the agenda. Then they have to receive the advice of the members on such matters. So basically that means that the board and the members have to live with each other. The members get the majority of the meeting. Our meeting is 2 hours long. 1 hour and 55 minutes is members. 5 minutes is the president of the board standing up. He says, who else is from the board is here? There are people raise their hands. And he says, on the item 1, receiving the advice of the members on item 1, how does the board feel? Yes. They're fulfilling their function, but they've received the advice. Only one time in our history has the board voted against the membership, and it didn't go so well for the co-op. It's the most ridiculous, when I think of it now, it seems ridiculous. The members wanted to form a committee, simply form a committee to look into expanding into the building next to us, which we now own. The board, 3 of them, were adamantly opposed to expansion. The members, all they were asking for was a committee to study the feasibility of buying the building next door. Well, these 3 people, they were so adamantly opposed, they didn't even want a committee. So the meeting happened, the members overwhelmingly raised their hand, yes, we want a committee. These 3 people stood up and said, on receiving the advice of the members on item 1, forming a committee to explore the expansion of the co-op into Klein's building, how do you vote? 2 raised their hand, the other 3 said, no. Oh my God, it was an uproar. I mean, it was a real uproar. I mean, it was probably 2 years of a diversion away from everything because people were outraged. How dare you? It's 1997. We've been doing this for 24 years, and you've decided suddenly all at once that, you know. What happened was those 3, I think they were all men, those 3 men were all removed as their terms. And luckily for us, the building next door was not bought by anyone else. So when this issue came up in about 2.5 years, we were still able to buy the building next door. No one is going to advise you to ever do that in the United States.
Sorry, are they still members?
One of them is, yes. One of them is. And those of us who know his name, I mean, you know, when I tell this story, I would never say his name, you know. But I wonder how he feels. I don't know. But anyway, in the United States, they would never do this. They would never recommend you do this. We think it's what actually keeps us all really strong as a co-op. We don't allow the board to meet in private. They always have to meet in front of the members. They have to listen to advice. It's a collective decision-making body. It's not 5 people who get to drive the co-op forward in the direction they see fit. It's also very transparent in that way.
When you say you don't allow the board to meet in private, that's over and above these monthly meetings
Right.
as well. They can't meet in private at all.
At all.
Right. Okay, so their deliberations as a board are effectively in front of and with.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And some people say, well, you're rubber stamping, and that's not exactly true. They all explain that let's say the members voted to give themselves each, you know, everyone gets a 50% discount. Yeah, sounds great. When you get to the till, you pay 50% less. Well, the board is going to say, now you're putting the co-op into financial jeopardy, and they would be opposed. I mean, it's a judicious use of their power, but the main thrust of how decisions are made is with as many members involved as possible.
And I assume that scenario there whereby the board meeting is held, the monthly board meeting, which we would consider it to
Right.
be, is held in front of the full membership or any of them that want to attend.
Mm-hmm.
That, I presume that's unique to Park Slope, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of all the other food co-ops, etc., across the states, yeah, that would be that.
And it really, most people think we're kind of crazy for doing it. We think that we couldn't change a system that was working for 4 years and people felt really committed to and felt invested in and had worked really hard over time to make decisions that way. And just because suddenly you have to have a board doesn't mean you remove power from people.
And do you find it getting? I can see the merit of it, and in terms of sticking close to the cooperative ideals, etc., and the kind of watchdog effect, right? I'm just wondering, from a practical operations point of view, does it mean that the meetings then, if everybody is allowed a say in what is effectively a monthly board meeting, presumably they have a propensity to go on forever, do they?
No. We would never let them unless you have, they're technically 2 3/4 hours, a shift's length. And if we get to we get 2 hours into it, 2.5 hours into it, the chair of the meeting will say, we're 2.5 hours into it. I mean, the chair moves the meeting along, but if we get to that and there's still a very active debate, you can do one of 2 things. You can formally extend the length of the meeting, which would require a vote of the people in presence to formally extend it that evening, or someone could make a motion from the floor to table that item to another meeting. So then you cease discussion. If it was something to be voted on, it doesn't get voted on, and then it gets taken up at another one. No, we would never abuse people. I mean, I think that you have to be respectful, and that's the point of having a chair committee, is to kind of keep the meeting moving forward. And to make an agenda that's reasonable to be discussed and voted on in that length of time.
How long's the term for the directors?
3 years, staggered. Yeah, staggered. So.
Can they be re-voted?
Yeah. Our president who just got reelected, Bill. He has probably been on the board now this is probably the beginning of his 3rd term. Yeah. It's most people. It's not. In other co-ops, it's an extremely important position. One reason it's extremely important is that the general manager of the co-op reports directly to the board. We sort of, as employees, as general coordinators, we report to the whole membership. We are actually hired by the membership. When I was hired as a general coordinator, not when I was hired as an hourly employer, I was hired by the general coordinators as an hourly, but when I was promoted to general coordinator, even though I had been an employee, I had to go in front of the membership at one of these meetings, and they had the group of members who had interviewed me had to state why I was qualified for the job, and then I had to stand there and answer any questions that people had for me, and then I had to watch as people raised their hands, yes or no, So and then the board, said accepted the advice of the members. So technically, we report in that function, in that way to them. But in other co-ops where the board is much more, they meet, not in private. They can go into executive session. All those. They have a much more direct relationship with the general manager, who then has a direct relationship to the employees below him or her. There have been attempts in the United States with co-ops to introduce a different way of managing that, because some boards had gotten way too active in the operations of the co-op, in the daily operations. I didn't like that you put that bread in that basket, put it in that one. I mean, quite literally, that was how detailed, and it was like general managers were like, whoa, I can't do this job. If, as a board member, you're gonna come in and tell me where to put the can of soup or something like that. So now they call it policy governance. You can look it up. It's a way of sort of structuring management by the board of the paid staff through a much more controlled way, in which the board is basically saying, we won't do daily operations, we'll do long-range planning, we'll do strategic planning, stuff like
How
that.
many terms can a director be re-elected for?
As many as they want.
Well,
Yeah, because they say it in front of people. They say, I've been a member. I mean, most of them, I think it's, we had a woman, Audrey, who retired last year from the board. She didn't put herself up for re-election. But at the same time, we had, that election, we actually had, Audrey retired, and we had, I guess, a couple people. well, maybe not there. But anyway, Audrey had been on the board for maybe 15 years. She had been a member since the very beginning. She was one of the very first people to sign up for the co-op. Her institutional knowledge was invaluable. But she was replaced by someone who is, I don't know, Zoe's probably 28, 29. So it works, you know. So now we have a board with, you know, some people that have been members for, you know, a couple decades, and then we have someone like Zoe who's actually she grew up in the co-op. Her family has been members, but she herself hasn't been a working member, but except for after she graduated from college and moved back. So we have a good diversity, I think, now, which is good.
Would it be fair to say that the M&A, the Articles of Association, that they're defined that they're filed with the state, right? So they're fairly general. Your this chap here, bylaws, they're specific to Park Slope.
Yes.
And that mark you out as different, right? Ineffectively.
Right.
Changing.
Well, you know, not in the general categories.
No, yeah.
Any bylaws of a consumer cooperative, you're going to find a board of directors section, a meeting section, a membership section. You know, you're going to find those.
But it's
but
in that,
the details underneath it differ. Yeah.
So if the members, if there was a move to change your bylaws, do you determine in your bylaws what sort of membership, what vote? Is it just a straight majority of the vote that will change bylaws?
Yeah, the changing of the bylaws is a straight majority. The removal of directors, so if someone was a director and someone, I guess, accused them of malfeasance or something in their role, is a 2/3 majority. I mean, so it's bylaw changes aren't, you know, I mean, most people fall asleep when you talk about the bylaws, you know, I mean, you know,
well, let me put it another way,
and I think the principle is that for the most part, you want to give the organization room to breathe and grow inside your bylaws. Who you are in 2014 and who you hope to be in like 2030, you know, you don't want bylaws written for who you are in 2014, which might not meet who you are in 2030. So, and I think sometimes the details is where people who are up to no good hang their hats on. Oh, you said here, it's $100 forever and ever, in perpetuity, it's $100, I'm gonna raise a campaign, you'll never be able to raise this, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you just say it's set by the board, it's like that person can't get their sort of ire up that like, you promised me $100 and now, you know, you're changing it on me or something. So we feel like, don't tie your hands. Do what's legally right, set out the framework, and then give the membership. So like, often in the bylaws it says the directors do this, the directors do that. Well, we know because of this paragraph that the directors are doing that upon the advice of the membership. So we know that if there was to be a final decision about changing like the work requirement or changing, you know, how much money people have to contribute, or dissolving us, you know, we know that all of that is first going to be widely discussed by the membership and voted on. So it's not going to happen out of the blue because a board decided, well, this isn't a going enterprise anymore, and so here we are in a room, let's dissolve the co-op. You know, or this person here seems to want to offer us money, so let's.
I suppose what's going through my mind is co-ops, if they're successful, or sorry, if they're not successful, they wither on the vine, which is one scenario. But if they are successful, you want to make sure that they don't transition over time to conventional profit maximization model, right? And profit extraction.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it seems to me that you folks do it in that Article 2 there, or
Right.
pretty much nailed it down there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think that, let me make sure that there's something else really, there might not be anything else interesting here. We don't, I mean, the other things is like voting, how you're gonna let people vote. The only voting, obviously legally, that matters is the annual meeting voting, because this vote here, though it's in our bylaws, is not, it's advisory. It's not compulsory on the board. So the annual meeting is compulsory. So how members vote in the annual meeting by law, by corporate law, by the state cooperative corporation, is required to be ratified by the board. The board, if in the annual meeting election, they, elect a slate of candidates, the board, the existing board can't say, oh, we don't like that slate, we're gonna, that is, the annual meeting decision is binding on the board by the membership. That's one of the rights of membership, is your annual meeting vote. Where was I going with this? I was gonna say something about, so we only allow proxy votes at the annual meeting. That's the one place that the law allows you to send out a ballot to all, well, you have to, you're required, all members of record at the time that the mailing is ready have to receive notification of the annual meeting and any proxy ballots that you're gonna provide to them. So we don't have electronic voting. We don't have absentee voting or proxy voting on any other issues. Those are things that come up occasionally, and I could see that's probably the next place where maybe we would have to amend our bylaws. Either electronic voting in the sense of just electronic voting for the annual meeting, because people want to use that as a way to vote as opposed to getting a proxy ballot or attending the meeting. They would like to vote in the store, like on a laptop or something.